The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect or represent the views and opinions of WBGR Network.
Good evening and welcome. We are back once again. It's Thursday, January 14th, I believe, and we are live at WBGR, Health and Wellness Network. I'm your host, Rick Davis, and welcome to Just Enough, your show for help, hope, and healing. Tonight, I'm really excited about the show because we are talking about surviving depression. We have our guest, Candace Wrights, here, but before we get started, we also want to let you all know that the phone lines will be open. We'll be taking some call-ins, and yes, as I promised last week, you will be eligible to win a can of Lysol. Yay! That's something everybody needs. So what we're going to do, I wanted to talk a little bit about the week, but first, I want to thank Michelle Jackson, Minister Michael Moore, and Minister Robert Young. Those are individuals who have sown into the ministry here at Just Enough, and we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We also just touch on the past week a little bit. It has been, you can tell when you're doing the right thing because the enemy doesn't let you rest. You get poked, prodded, pulled, cajoled, shaken, and it's all because of the fact that you're trying to do something to reach God's people. Make no mistake about it. I don't count any of this lightly. I take this very seriously because this is ministry that God has given me, and I have to do what I have to do to make sure that I'm taking care of God's business, and in turn, He takes care of me. One of the things I also wanted to share with you all is if you wanted to sow into the ministry, please reach out to me, or you can cash at me at Have Mercy, the $ Have Mercy, HVMERCY, and that will be greatly appreciated. Or you can reach out to me via Facebook on my Just Enough page or on my personal page for those of you who are on it. But without no further ado, the beautiful young lady to my left is none other than Candace Wrights, and I'm going to share with you her bio, and then we're going to get right into surviving depression. Candace Wrights, mother, author, minister, and mental health advocate, had developed a passion for writing at an early age. Her transparency has gifted her with a heart for this generation as she fosters conversations about mental health, conveying that believers can have both our strong God and a strong therapist. I'm going to read that part again. We can have a strong God, our strong God, and a strong therapist. In 2010, she received her bachelor's degree in psychology from Bowie State University, HBCU. In 2015, Candace became the founder of Candace Wrights, LLC, and accepted the call on her life to preach and teach the gospel of Jesus Christ. In 2017, Candace obtained her master's degree in social work from Howard University, HU, graduating cum laude. Oh, she real smart, y'all. And on April 9th, 2017, she became a licensed minister. Candace is also the author of Breathe, Rest, Reflect, and Reset, part Bible study, part memoir outlining God's blueprint for healing. Breathe journeys through the author's process of healing by way of scriptural and practical exercises detailing her battle with depression, anxiety, alcoholism, and suicidal ideation. Candace lives in the area, and she has two sons, Bryson and Braxton, whom I know she's going to say hi to. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Candace Wrights.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Not a problem, Candace. It's my pleasure. Let's just jump right into it. Let's not hold back. Let's get in here and make things happen. Tell us a little bit more about your background, like some of the stuff that wasn't in your bio.
For sure. So I was born in Selma, Alabama. I grew up in Alabama for the most part, most of my childhood. My mother and father, they were both serving in the military, so we traveled often. And we traveled from Alabama to New York to where we currently reside now, in Maryland. So I traveled a lot growing up. So yeah, I'm a country girl at heart.
Okay, country girl. All right. So what do you do professionally, and how long have you been doing it?
So professionally, I've been working for the federal government as a management analyst, and also I am working as an entrepreneur, writing. I just wrote my first book and developing mobile applications for inspirational content. So that's what I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so let's start digging into your story a little bit. You can start with your childhood, Christian upbringing if you had one, or just take it and run with it.
Yeah. So I was raised in the church. Grew up in the church, of course. My childhood, I've experienced a lot of things and I witnessed a lot of things as a child. And, within our culture, when things happen, a lot of times you say, what goes on in this house stays in this house, and you hear those things. And I didn't feel like I could speak and say some of the things that, I was struggling with or have, witnessed or, personally experienced. So, my voice was silenced. So as I grew older and I experienced things, I, suppressed them and I kept them, buried, inside. And then, when I got to, my adolescence age, during teenage years, I started acting out what I was feeling internally. So I ran to sex. During that time, that was, an outlet for me because I was housing so much pain that I needed to soothe myself, in some type of way. So I became sexually active, and then I started self-medicating. I started, taking pills and doing things to kind of just soothe me and to just make me feel good, to suppress, the pain that I experienced and some of the trauma that I experienced, during those early years. And what I realized is that I never really gave voice to my pain. I just suppressed it. So I had my first suicide attempt at the age of 16. And what I learned now that I didn't know back then is that during that time when I was 16, that I really didn't want to die. It was a cry out for help. And I just wanted someone to listen to me, someone to see the pain that I was in. But since that didn't happen, I kind of journeyed through life just suppressing everything. And, the wounds that I had, the open wounds that I had, I jumped into, receiving higher education and jumping into like achieving things because I used achievements as a band-aid for the wounds that I was experiencing because I didn't want to sit with myself. I didn't want to face myself. So that's how, I grew up when it comes to some of the, trauma and abuse that I've experienced.
You said something really, really serious that I want to make sure people heard you. Mm-hmm. You talked about having grown up in the church. Mm-hmm. And when you were going through all of this, was there anybody that you could talk to in church, or was there anybody there that you felt connected to enough?
During that time when I was younger, I did. But, sometimes when you're going through things, you see what's happening at surface level. So they can see, like, during that time, I was, battling with alcoholism. I didn't know that's what it was at the time. But now, I have the language and the tools. I know, what it is. So they saw what was going on at surface level. Like, she's drinking a little bit too much. She's always intoxicated. There's something going on. But instead of focusing on the alcohol, it's just like no one asks, well, why is she drinking? What's going on at the root to make her, act out in this way?
Okay.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about pain and trauma. Mm-hmm. And those are two of the things. And you also said something real powerful. You talked about the black family and how we grow up. If You know, what happens in here stays in here. Don't talk about what goes on outside of this house.
Don't
you
tell
know,
mommy. Don't
right,
tell daddy.
right.
You know,
Our business, right? It's our business. You know, our secrets, and those dirty little secrets snowball.
They do.
Because what happens a lot of times is life goes on, so we pile other trauma on top of, and other pain on top of the pain that we're trying to deal with. And nobody really gets to understand what's going on, because we're just getting to the point as a community and as with families where we're starting to actually pay attention to those signs that say something isn't quite right. What's going on with, you know, with Junior, with, you know, with Lil Pam, whatever. And sometimes I believe that, you know, and even the church is just starting to catch up. You have a lot of churches now that are coming up with mental health ministries and things of that nature. But I have to ask you, you know, when did you, okay, because you went through the church piece, when did you really start to notice that maybe something isn't quite right?
Honestly, it's this past year.
Oh, wow.
This past year. Because like I said, growing up, you know, not having that voice of, you know, expressing, you know, the pain and the trauma, I threw myself into things. And a lot of people that are housing so much trauma and pain and abuse, you see them throwing themselves into ministry, throwing themselves into achievements, throwing themselves into their profession because they don't want to deal with themselves. They don't want to sit with themselves. They don't want to deal with themselves. So it's just like, that's what I did. You know, I threw myself into, you know, getting my education, and only thing that I was doing was just slapping like that bandage of achievement over an infected wound. So it's just like, I'm thinking I'm out here thriving, you know, I'm doing it. And then what I realized, even like in going into the field, the mental health field, I went to get my degree in psychology initially to save myself, to find myself, to figure out why did the pain and trauma impact my behavior and my thinking, and why am I running to men? Why am I running to a bottle? Why am I running to pills? Like, what is it that I'm not handling pain and trauma the way my mom handled it, or the way my grandmother handled it, or the way my auntie handled it? Why am I reverting to thinking that suicide is the best option for me here? So I threw myself into that profession, but then realizing I fell in love with the profession, and I fell in love with people in a sense of, you know, helping them not feel the way that I was feeling, but then realizing I'm helping others at the expense of myself.
So let me ask you this. When did you have your first suicide attempt?
I've had 3 suicide attempts, and I had my final, and I say my final because God told me that was the last time I was going to have to go through that.
All right.
I had my first suicide attempt at 16. The second one was in my 20s, and the third one is, so I just realized, just sitting here with you, the third one was actually a year ago, around Christmas time.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah, around Christmas time.
So, okay, let's take a little left turn.
Yeah.
What are some of the symptoms that you had that indicated depression? What were some of the things that you know now that you have gone through this process? What were some of the symptoms that you saw that you had?
So, you know, jumping into like I said, higher education and even ministry, you know, I always knew that there was a calling on my life, and I always knew that. Even like jumping into ministry, I did all of these things thinking that I was okay. Like, I honestly, because I suppressed so much that I started to believe, you know how you say you can believe your own lies? It was just like, I started to believe, like, Candace, you're good, you got this. And what I realized now is I didn't. But when I was going through, you know, some of those present traumas, you know, going through a divorce, going through my child being abused, going through all of these things, it triggered the little girl inside of me. So now for the first time, I'm dealing with my past trauma and my present trauma, and it felt like it was suffocating the life out of me, like I couldn't breathe. And, you know, I started back drinking heavily. I started back smoking. You know, I started, you know, sleeping all day. Some days I would stay in bed for, you know, days at a time. Or, you know, not showering, you know, not taking care of myself the way that I would normally take care of myself. And then starting wrestling like with those suicidal thoughts again, thinking that, my life wasn't worth living, that no one cared, that I would, my boys would be better off without me. Because not only the things that I was hearing within my own head, but the things that I was hearing around me, it kind of, in my brain was just like, see, this is why.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's heavy. The things that were around you. So the environment kind of played a role as well.
For sure.
Let me, okay, you've given me a lot to work with here. Yeah. Okay, so your first attempt, you were how old?
16.
16. Okay, were you given any assistance following that?
No.
Nothing. You just went right back to trying to get right back into life. Was there anybody that had a clue as to what was going on? In terms of parents and
of course,
loved ones.
My mother and I actually just had a conversation about all of this. Because she was just like, why didn't you tell me? Even the most recent suicide attempt, within like a year ago. And it's because, we've been conditioned as not just Black women, but, within our community that, when things happen in life, you just dust it off and you keep it moving, you keep on going, we're strong. And so it's just like, I was raised by such a strong woman that I didn't see her pain. Like, she shielded me from a lot of the things that she had to go through. So it's just like, I'm trying to navigate through life the way she dealt with it, trying to navigate through life the way this person, dealt with it. So it's just like, God, like, when do I ever have a moment to not be okay? Why do I always have to be strong when all of these daggers are in my back? Like, how can I still walk strong? And, during that season, God showed me, it's like, you don't have to be okay. Like, this is the time for me to hold you.
Oh, wow. Now, see, there's something a little different because, see, you had an early connection with God. So what would you say to somebody who doesn't have that connection, if they're feeling those things and have some of those experiences that you've had? What would you tell that person that doesn't have that connection to God yet?
There are so many resources and tools out here that you can receive that assistance and you can receive that help. And, it was in therapy for me, even growing up in the church. It was in therapy that God showed me, no matter what you went through, like the depression, the suicidal thoughts, the suicidal, the suicide attempts, the alcoholism, the sex, everything, it hasn't changed my mind about you.
Oh, wow.
You're still loved, you're still anointed, you're still called, you're still graced for this. This is just something you had to go through. So it's in therapy a lot of times that people find God. It's not always inside of the church walls.
Okay.
And I think a lot of times when you have those resources and tools in a safe space to like talk to somebody, it's just like you realize God is with me even in this situation. He's still there.
And I'm glad you said that, because sometimes, inside the church walls is where the greatest hurt takes place. When somebody, because everybody can't handle your pain.
I learned that personally.
Yeah, everybody can't handle it. So here you are, young woman dealing with alcoholism, depression. You're achieving well in school, and I think that kind of gives us a false lens because we're able to function and do well.
And that's the thing that I learned, and I know this, like you hear the functioning alcoholics. Mm-hmm. That's why when I received the diagnosis in therapy that, the major depressive disorder, the anxiety, the PTSD, the post-traumatic stress disorder, that didn't raise my eyebrows. Because, I knew that. I knew what I was feeling. It was the substance abuse. When they said, which substance abuse, that's what, when she rolled that off her tongue, I was just like, I ain't no alcoholic. You must got the wrong person. But what I realized is that I don't have to be on the corner slumped over, because I was just like, I'm still taking care of my kids. The bills are still getting paid. I'm showing up at work. I'm showing up at church. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing. But the problem is I'm using alcohol to cope. That's a problem.
Oh,
that's the issue.
Wait a minute. Say that part again. You were using alcohol to do what?
Cope.
Oh, okay.
And that was the issue. And the only thing it was like the loud voices that I was hearing in my head when I was intoxicated. It only magnified it. It didn't decrease it.
So it got louder.
It got louder.
The more you drank.
The more I drank, it got louder.
Okay. Again, we're sitting here talking to Candace Wrights. Candace is an accomplished author, really smart person, period. Degrees all over the place. And a mom on top of all that. So, what I want to ask is, do you, being an advocate now, okay, because we're going to get back in your story. We got to go back to that. But being an advocate now, do you think that it's more difficult to reach people now in terms of, because you have people out here who have gone to therapy, and they say it hasn't worked. Part of that may be the clinician, part of that may be the individual and their level of commitment and readiness. Yeah. Is it hard now to find a good therapist?
I think it can be a trial and error.
Okay.
I think, thankfully for me, because of the severity of where my mental state was, I didn't have to go through that trial and error. My therapist now, she's been consistent through this time, but sometimes for, individuals, it is a trial and error. And I think personally, for me, and then some others that I've heard, they want to make sure that the person that they're speaking to understands their language. And what I mean by understand their language, their faith language. A lot of people nowadays are seeking out faith-based therapists and clinicians, their cultural competency, making sure that they understand, the weight of how race can play a part, to make sure like they're competent so they can understand some of these things that we're dealing with for the first time are coming from childhood wounds, that are coming from generational things and what our moms and our grandmas and so forth have gone through. So having that cultural competency is like a huge piece. So I think when you know what you need, it can be easier to identify. But if you don't, it could be a trial and error. Okay. Yeah.
All right. I want to read, and I want to thank everybody that's watching us. I want to read a comment. Brother Michael Moore, Minister Michael Moore says, Candace, I thank God for you, and I can say you're a blessing. I'm so proud of you for your honesty and ask. He says, ask the pastor if he would give you my number. I would like for you to give a word on Monday to those coming into his ministry.
Wow. Thank you, Pastor.
We'll make that happen, Mike. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a brief break. We're going to take a commercial break. Don't go anywhere, y'all. We're going to open up the phone lines shortly because I know you all have some questions you may want to directly ask Candace. But we're going to take a brief break and we'll be right back. Thanks for watching.
Hey guys, I'm Asia Morgan, an intern at WBGR Network and a proud senior of Morgan State University. Here's a few pointers on campus and community safety. Use your eyes and stay alert. Studies show that looking a predator directly in their face causes them to be less likely to choose you as their victim because you then have the means to easily identify them. Focus on your surroundings and not your phone. And never walk alone. Walk in pairs or in groups wherever you go because we are stronger in numbers. If that's not possible, use safety services. Universities have escort services available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Take advantage when leaving late night study sessions, parties, or anything else where you will be usually traveling alone. And when using riding services like Lyft or Uber, always check to see that you're getting into the right car. If you're traveling alone, be a backseat rider, buckle up no matter what, and never forget to share the details of your trip with a friend or family member. Lastly, trust your instincts. If you feel like something is wrong, 9 times out of 10, it usually is. Don't ignore that feeling. This has been a message from the WBGR PSA Project.
We're back and want to thank you for coming back. We're here. This is Just Enough, your show for help, hope, and healing. And we are here with Candace Wrights, who is a depression survivor, as well as surviving 3 separate suicide attempts. Candace is also a minister. So I wanted to kind of touch on that whole being a minister but being depressed. Let's talk a little bit about that.
That is such a heavy question. And it's a heavy question because I wrestled in that area greatly. Like, I tarried in that area greatly. Because for the life of me, I couldn't understand why I was wrestling with these things as a minister, you know? And what God showed me is that because I only survived things from my childhood, because I survived things in my adolescence, because I survived what, you know, I recently have went through, I never took an opportunity to heal. So I was ministering while I was bleeding, you know, and thanks be unto God that even in my disobedience of when I heard him say, this is the time for you to heal and rest, he didn't allow my bleeding to bleed on his sons and daughters. That he still used me in that capacity. But I wrestled with it because it's just like, God, you know, a lot of times we hear about, you know, physical, you know, trauma that we experience, but we don't ever, you know, sometimes we tap into it, but the spiritual trauma, like, God, I'm sitting here serving you. God, I stopped running. God, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And at the time in my life, I had stopped drinking for years. Okay. And now I'm starting back. And I'm like, God, like, why am I reverting back to drinking? And I know your word. And I've been praying and I'm fasting. And things are just, it's just like hell is just on my back. It's just getting worse. But what I realized is that I never healed. I was just surviving.
Okay. Good point. You hadn't healed; you were just surviving. So, and this is a thing for me as well. Mm-hmm. The I call it the wounded healer. We stand in the pulpit and we proclaim and we profess and we preach and we go hard and we posture and we do all kinds of stuff, and we are tore up from the floor up. Yeah. And we don't want anybody to know that we are battling with our little demons, but those are the same demons we preach about.
Yes.
You know, last week I had Pastor Jamela Woods on here talking about grief and loss. And she said, God commands us to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. Yeah. She said the problem with that is, and I'm going to apply this to the preachers, we don't even love ourselves. We don't even know ourselves to love ourselves, to be able to love our neighbor. Yeah. So when we, as ministers, we have to be able to be transparent enough to go get help. Yes. Because sometimes we think the call means I'm good.
Yeah.
I've beat all them little demons and I've dealt with all that stuff. Just like it's like this, like me being a recovering person. Tomorrow, if I'm not careful, I can end up back where I was when I was in active addiction.
That's so true, yeah.
So what I have to do, and this is where transparency comes in, because everybody can't handle my transparency. Yeah. They ask me, how you doing? I tell you, I don't feel good. I'm not, bad day. They say, you the man of God. Yeah. They give you the cliches, right?
And mentally they don't realize like how that breaks you down, and it broke me down so bad because it's just like, well, you're a minister, you went, to Howard, you got your education here, and you have 2 boys. How selfish of you to be thinking about suicide. But what you don't realize is mental illness. What is an illness? An illness is a sickness. You wouldn't tell that to somebody that's laying in a hospital bed with a physical illness. You would say, no, go get help. And that's the same thing for our mental wounds. Like, me being a minister, me being a child of God doesn't immune me from trauma, pain, or abuse. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like going through that as a minister, and like to hear what, just pray about it and, fast, and God showed me, he was just like, you can't pray over this. You can't preach over this. You can't fast over this. You can't shout over this. You can't dance over this. This is something that you're going to have to sit in and heal. And sometimes we don't want to heal because we don't want to feel. And I remember, December of last year when I was wrestling like with God, I said, God, I'm done. Like, I'm tired. I don't want to be here anymore. It's like I'm showing up Sunday after Sunday and seeing everybody be delivered and this, that, and then I'm crying, drinking a bottle the rest of the day because I poured out from an empty well. And I'm like, God, like, what am I doing here? Like, what am I doing here? And I wrestled with God. And I remember, like, my boys wasn't with me during that time, and I said, God, this is the opportunity, because I had a plan. A lot of people don't know that I had an actual plan. I said, and I prayed. It's just like a part of my brain was like, Candace, you really don't want to do this. And you see it on television, like the devil on one side and the angel on the other side. Like, we see it on television, but that's real.
Exactly.
That is real. So it's just like, I'm sitting here looking at pictures of my boys, and God is just like, look at what you're going to leave. Like, look, but the devil's just like, look how happy they are. They don't need you. They don't need you. And what I realized in that moment, Rick, is that I really didn't want to die. I just wanted the pain to stop.
There it is. Bingo. See, people, that's where people miss it.
Yeah.
It's not about wanting to die. It's about just wanting to stop hurting.
Yeah.
Because we take on a lot. I have made it my business to surround myself with people who are in the profession and in the ministry, because we can talk differently than somebody that's just in the ministry.
For sure.
And that helps, because you can talk about things that you wouldn't normally talk about with other folks.
For sure.
Because, like I said, and I say this and I'm going to say it again, especially about the healing piece. You can't put something behind you until you put it in front of you.
Yes.
That way, when you put it in front of you, what you're saying is, God, I am going to trust you.
Yes.
That's a key point, and I'm glad that you brought that out in terms of the ministry piece.
Yeah.
So what was the reaction of friends and family members and other ministers? What was the reaction when they found out that Candace looked real good on the outside? Everything is looking like it's going great, but on the inside, she was literally falling apart.
Yeah. And it goes back to childhood, because I learned how to be silent in my pain, and because I learned how to suppress it, I learned how to navigate through the pain and trauma, because it's all I knew. So I learned how to show up, on the outside, being my full self. And even my family and some of my close friends, they said, there was this like, Cam, we didn't know, because you was doing it all, you was handling it. But then when they look back on it, they said the signs were there. You did say something. And a lot of people that are wrestling with depression and suicidal ideation, they may not just come out and say,
right,
I want to die, I want to kill myself. I didn't, just come out and say that. But I did say, I'm tired. I don't know how I'm gonna do this. My behaviors change. Like a pin can drop, and it's just like I would have a panic attack. There was things like, and even with depression, one of the symptoms is that you lose the desire of things that once brought you joy. God is my everything. Okay, let me say that. God is my everything.
Okay.
The moment where I just came out my mouth and said, I don't want to pray. Don't call me to pray. There was signs there. There was things that I said. There was actions. There was behaviors. But because family and friends, sometimes we don't want to see our loved ones in that pain. We prematurely try to push them on the other side of healing, because that's how they did it. And what God showed me is that, in this season, he showed me that what may be tolerable for you, Rick, may be terminal for me, because you don't know what I've been through. You don't know what my history is like.
It is.
You can get terminated from a job and you be like, deuces, look at my resume. I can go get one tomorrow. But you don't know how hard I had to fight for this one job, that when they let me go, you don't know the abandonment issues that I've struggled with. You don't know the rejection issues that I struggle with. So it's terminal for me. So being within the church and even family, hearing, suck it up and pray about it and get over it. You're not the only one, who husband left you. You're not the only one whose child been through this. You're not the only one that's struggling. It's so minimizing, and it's so dismissive.
Wow.
And it's so critical not to use that language, because they didn't know. I was almost out of here. So it changed the language in within my close friends, that now it's just they understand me better, and it opens up the door for communication.
You said something real strong, invalidating of your feelings. Yeah. Folks, we have to be careful how we talk. When somebody tells you that something's going on, or they're not feeling well, or something's not right, believe them. And don't dismiss how they feel, because you know what? That's their reality. Their reality is that something's happening. I'm not feeling well. I'm not good. regardless, because see, what's very dismissive is the piece where you said everybody's going through something.
Yeah.
We already aware of that. We're aware of that. But right now, we're not talking about everybody.
We talking
about me. It's me.
Yeah.
So we have to be very careful, y'all. We have to be very careful. You know, listening is an art.
That's why you have 2 ears.
Girl, there's a fellowship I'm associated with. They say God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth so we can do more listening than we do talking. And that's serious.
Yeah.
But see, here comes the other part. When you listen and you hear, you ain't got to fix it.
Yeah.
But have a responsible response.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, come on. I know you want to say something.
And it just, I don't know, it just leads me to like the book because
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, it was in therapy that my therapist introduced me to the story of Elijah. You know, the Old Testament
Mm-hmm.
prophet Elijah. And I grew up in the church, so I know about it. Well, I thought I knew about Elijah, but I knew about Elijah on the side of like what he's done as far as his achievements and the things
Mm-hmm.
that God did through him. You know, I knew about that. No one ever told me about the depressed and suicidal Elijah. So when I started studying 1 Kings 19 and seeing all the miraculous things that God had done in Elijah's life, and like you said with your last show talking about, you know, grief, sometimes we only categorize grief as like loss of a loved one, but grief is also an unexpected outcome. And during that time, Elijah had an unexpected outcome. He thought after he defeated all of those, you know, false gods, that, you know, King Ahab and Queen Jezebel was just going to, like, go bye-bye. Like, that's what he probably thought, you know? And when that didn't happen, it's just like that spiritual trauma, you know, took over and Elijah ran. And because I've wrestled with depression and suicidal ideation, in my mind, I was just like, God, if this was Elijah's first response was to take his life, that lets me know there's something in Elijah's past that has happened for that to be his first response, and how God handled. And I think, Rick, that's the most important thing the body of Christ can learn, is how God handled Elijah. God didn't throw his ministry in his face like, look at what you just raised this widow's son from the dead. Like, God didn't do any of that. God strategically and intentionally assigned angels to him to first feed his physical needs, because mental illness, like that exhaustion, it manifests itself physically. So it's like God gave him time to rest, God gave him time to reflect, and then God gave him an assignment to get back out there. So it's just like, even in therapy, you know, like the first thing you ask a person is, why are you here? That's what God asked Elijah. Why are you here? Because God wanted Elijah to put language to his pain, to give him the space to talk it out.
Are y'all listening to her? I'm not saying another word. No, look, you got to hear some of this stuff in the chat. Candace, you are helping people with your testimony, especially during this season. That was from Robin Ball. You know, somebody else says, say that. God is my everything. That's Laquetta Smith. Keisha McMillan, she's all over the place. She's right there with you. She's amening you. She's truly, she's giving you a lot of different comments, you know, and compliments. She said, Keisha also said something real strong. She said, listen to understand, not to respond. Keisha, you hit that thing, girl.
Yeah,
Lisa says she's telling my story too. You know, people are, you know, I responded really well. Keep it coming, y'all. We're going, after our next commercial break, which is not coming for a couple of minutes, what we're going to do is we're going to open up phone lines, and we're going to let you all call in. And please call, and you can ask Candace questions directly. But you said, when you talked about Elijah, you know, see, a lot of people want to think that there was nothing wrong with folk in the Bible. They want to think that they were these upstanding and perfect people. This is why so many non-Christians always talk about people who are Christians being perfect. We are the most imperfect people on our way to perfection once we get out of here. But see, we serve a perfect God. Yeah. So what happens a lot of times is, but we also hide behind the Bible. You know, yeah. We can be nutty as a fruitcake, running around talking about old things pass away, all things are new. And your eyes wide open, and you got a bottle in your back pocket and a J inside in your inside pocket. Talking about, I'm a new creature. You know, no, you're just a crazy creature. Yeah. You know, and you don't understand what it is God is really trying to get you to do. Yeah. At the end of my run with drugs and alcohol, I had a suicide plan because again, those opposing forces. You know, look at what you've become. I told you wasn't gonna never be nothing. Your wife don't want to be bothered with you. Your kids hate you. You ain't got no job. You done stole Christmas 42 times. You done robbed people. You done stole. You pretty much done everything. You might as well go ahead and check it out, dude, because God don't even recognize who you are. Yeah. It was at that point where I cried out to God in all sincerity. Yeah. That's what happens. When you get, train up a child in the way that he should go, so when he is old, he won't depart from it. That is huge. And a lot of people just go by that, or we just say it in jest. But you grew up in church, and where did you end up turning to in your adult life after having wrestled with this whole depression thing and suicidal ideation? Right back with God. You know, what we're going to do is we're going to take another commercial break. Y'all go get something to drink or something real quick. And come back. We're going to take a commercial break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to open the phone lines so that you all can call in. And please, call in. And then plus, I'm still looking. We're going to figure out who's going to win this can of Lysol as well. So y'all stay with us. We'll be right back.
Sports is what we do. It's the fast track at peak speed, moving across the ice, blockers, hitters, B-team, beatdowns, and knockouts, doubleheaders, playoffs, touchdowns, smackdowns, on the mat or on the track. The spirit of a champion. The triple-double. Make that double front flip. This is what we do.
We're back. This is you watching Just Enough. I'm your host, Rick Davis, and our guest is Miss Candace Wrights, who has been simply amazing. Candace has shared so much information, so much of herself. I want to thank her for her transparency, and I want to thank all of you who have been commenting and watching thus far. I'm going to give you all the phone number to call in. The number is 301-429-9247. Again, that's 301-429-9247. Please call with your comments, questions, or if you just want to say hi, you know, it works too. And in the meantime, while y'all are getting that together, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit more about the book. Let's focus a little bit more about the book, on the book. So if one were, first of all, how can we get the book?
So the book is available everywhere. It's on Amazon. It's on Books A Million. It's on my website, wherever you get your books online. That's where you can get it. And you just type in, you know, my name, search my name, Candace Wrights, and you'll find it. Okay, you wanna let people know your website? Sure. It is CandaceWrights.com. That's CANDACE, and then Wrights, WRITES.com.
All right, now y'all know how to get in touch with her.
That was the plug.
Yeah, y'all know how to get in touch with her now. I want to read a comment. Keisha says, been in church all my life, and Rick, you know who my mama was. Yes, I do. Some of the best fried chicken. However, and some other stuff. Cobbler. Let me get back. However, my reckoning didn't come until after she passed, and I truly got to know God for myself. And you know what? That's all right, Keisha. That's all right. She introduced you. She built the bridge. And now you're building a bridge for yours. I just want to encourage you, and I'm always around. We don't chat as much as we used to, but I love you, cuz. This has been a real pleasure. It has been a real pleasure because Candace when we had a conversation earlier this week, and we talked, I just like to talk to people to get a feel for where they are and how we gonna handle the discussion. And Candace was like, I'm gonna be transparent, and that I can say that she is. Yeah, y'all, she gonna come back. She has to. We have to get her back. We have to get her back. Tell me something. Okay, now that you've gone through this process,
It's still going.
Yeah, and getting better.
And getting better, getting stronger and wiser. Yeah.
Do you have any mentors? People that you work with outside of the therapist? I mean, that serve as like mentors or somebody that's like a support person. Do you?
Yes.
Okay.
I do.
Okay.
I lean heavily, on my spiritual family. I lean heavily on when you say outside of my therapist. So yeah, right now, because of what I've gone through, I'm very intentional about who I allow in my space. Because it goes back into what you was talking about, like person, an environment. Your environment, really can be detrimental to you. Mm-hmm. So it's just like, I know now there's certain language that I probably can't handle, or certain spaces that I shouldn't enter into. So I've been keeping like a tight little knit on like my network and my community around me, because even though I have, healed from a lot of things, like I'm about to celebrate a year next week of being sober.
Okay.
Because that's one of the things, that's one of the things I asked God, that night. I said, God, if we're going to do this, let me heal soberly. And it's been the hardest thing I feel like I've ever had to do, because I'm not running no more. So because of that, and because I'm still in therapy, I'm in therapy weekly still. I'm still, taking the steps to heal from some things that I have gone through, that I'm very cautious and careful. So, I have my spiritual family, I have my family, and, now that, we have these conversations, I can lean on them, so yeah.
Okay. I too still participate in therapy. As a matter of fact, I see my therapist before I come here.
Yeah. Really?
So yeah, every Thursday.
Wow.
Like clockwork. And it's been a big help, a huge help. You said something about your circle. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to remember who told me this statement. They said, everybody doesn't deserve a ticket to the movie called Your Life.
That one again.
And I'm like, and when they said, I was like, I'm gonna use that. So, I mean, and it's true. Everybody doesn't deserve to be in your life, and they can't go where God is taking you.
Yeah.
Sometimes God cleans us up and fixes us because He needs us to let go of those individuals, those people, those places that we've become comfortable with, that won't allow us to grow in the manner that He wants us to grow.
Yeah.
There's another comment here. As a person who suffers with depression and PTSD, I thank you for sharing your story. You really spoke to me. It was meant for me to hear this tonight. Yes, it was, Lisa. It was meant for you to hear it tonight. Along with the others that are watching, some of those who are not in the chat. One of the things that I'm big on is protecting yourself once you go through a process and begin your process of healing. Because don't think because you're starting to heal that the enemy is going to let you get away that easily.
Yeah, that's for sure.
You know, so what are some of the things you still kind of wobble back and forth with sometimes?
So one of the things that I'm learning is how to use my voice and how to say no. I still wrestle with saying no, because I wrestled with that people pleasing spirit, making, satisfying everyone and making sure, but it's just like I'm doing that at the expense of myself. So showing up for others and not even showing up for myself. So God showed me, in this season, you may have to disappoint some people. You may have to, and it's not intentional, but I have to do what's best for me. And I'm still wrestling in that, walking away from things and saying no. That's one area, I'm still wrestling with. And then, another area is that, I have those moments, and where it's just like, my thoughts, just start speaking to me. But what I realize is that when I have those thoughts, I counteract them. Okay. And by how I counteract them is saying, this is just a sucky moment. It doesn't mean I have a sucky life. It doesn't mean I'm a sucky mom. It doesn't mean I'm a sucky minister. It's like it's just like my brain just goes from 0 to it just goes all the way across the hall. So I realize in those moments that, I have to love on myself and know that this little moment that's all it is. It's a moment.
You said something strong. You said love on yourself. Okay, can you talk a little bit about loving on yourself? What does that look like?
Because I'm just now at the age of 32. I'm just now really learning how to fall in love with myself. Okay. I'm realizing that by doing that I have to choose spaces and people that are suited for me. Suited for the call on my life, suited for where God is taking me, suited for, the things that I have gone through, to know that, hey, God loves me so much that he didn't just let me go through all of this to take me back there. This was this process has been God really this past year, 2020, I was already quarantined before we actually went into the quarantine. So when this whole COVID started, I was just I already settled here. So, and it's because I needed that space. So me loving on myself is choosing what's best for my mental wellness, my emotional wellness, and my spiritual wellness, because I'm still journeying through, because there's things I'm still healing, from, and working with my therapist on, that I have to be so intentional about that.
Wow. Yeah. Let me read you a couple more comments. Aquetta said, that's true. No, not everybody is supposed to be on your journey. Anita Chamberlain, hey, woo. She said, no is a complete sentence.
Yes. And that was another thing I learned. I don't have to be, and that's something I am still working on, is just saying no. Like Anita said, just saying no. But I'm still working on it. So I'll say no and then explain my no. And it's just no, I have a reason just to say no. But that's,
it's our right to say no. And I had struggled in that area for a minute. And I started looking at it, because when I started giving away more of me than I was getting back, it quickly changed. You don't have to like me, because I'm good with me. And when we realize that, and respect other people's ability to say no. And
I take it personal.
Right.
Or is it like an attack or rejection?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Well, we got a lot of folk, and this is going to be another show, running around with issues with rejection. Yeah. No doesn't mean I'm rejecting you. No is just saying I can't do what you're asking. It's not saying I'm throwing you out or I don't want you near me or whatever. It's just, no. Yeah. So Mike Moore says, I've learned the hard way. They don't celebrate the second place, and when I'm not in first place, I can be there for anyone. So I have to take care of myself to be able to take care of another. I hear you, preacher. Yeah. Then my buddy Cheryl Owen says, my therapist gave me an assignment to say no to people for 1 week, and she definitely struggled with it. Yeah.
It's a struggle.
Because and I'm gonna tell you why it's a struggle. Because we like to be liked.
And we
feel that
somebody just said. That's what Lisa just said. She said, "I'm afraid that they're going to be angry with me," and that letting down people. But it's just like, how are you going to let yourself down?
We like to be liked. We want people to like us. We want people to love us. But I'm not going to care more about you than I care about me.
And that's where the self-love came from.
We have to get better with that. That's part of us learning to know who we are and learning to love ourselves, because then we'll be able to love our neighbor, like we love ourselves. We'll be more willing to, because we'll know that there are boundaries and limitations to everything. It's y'all can tell I'm having fun, right? But this is, it's refreshing to have an open dialogue. Because this is some of the stuff is stuff that people don't want to talk about.
Right,
they don't want to touch. It's not happening. It's not, I don't have to worry about it. It's not. I've never felt depressed. Everybody has felt depressed. Yeah. The thing of it is what did you do to come out of it? Yeah. How did you navigate? Yeah, exactly. How'd you cope? And if you picked up a bottle,
or anything else,
if you smoked a J, if you dropped a pill, if you laid on your back and threw your legs open, if you
that's what it is.
This is about what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a call. Line 1. Let's see what's happening. You're on Just Enough.
Hi, I wanted to commend Miss Candace Wright on her transparency and just sharing so openly about her life and struggles as a person who grew up in the church and struggling with not being able or not feeling safe enough to talk to people inside of the church. And we really need more people like you to speak more often to help them be set free. More believers be set free.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for calling.
Thank you, caller.
Yeah.
It's really. I want to thank our caller.
Something she said that stood out to me.
Say it.
So it's something that she said, like I was telling Rick, like that stood out to me, is that word safe. And because I didn't feel safe, I just went back to what I knew, which was just being quiet or just doing what was asked of me and showing up and doing. But what I realized is that when you don't feel safe, you could touch it at the surface level, but it's just like, if I don't feel safe with you at surface level of what you can see I'm going through, and you're telling me to suck it up, to pray about it, to pray your way through it, and you got the call in your life and all of these other things, I'm definitely not going to get to the root of all of my pain and issues. And I think for a lot of people, especially people that struggle with depression, they just want to be heard. They just want to be seen. And I didn't feel heard. I didn't feel seen until I got face-to-face with my therapist, and she introduced me to the story of Elijah. And by reading Elijah's story for the first time, I just broke down, because I felt like God saw my pain and he heard me, and he said, I still love you. You're still called. And just like he did with Elijah, after he gave him that time, he gave him an assignment. And what that showed me is that I don't care what anybody say about me as a minister. God told me that I'm called, that I'm anointed. Nothing that I went through negates that. And that's the same thing that he did with Elijah.
Exactly.
And it's just it tells us that, we serve such a loving and a compassionate and kind God and an affirming God. God affirmed me by giving me this assignment. God affirmed me by sitting me here with you to say your ministry, your voice is needed for such a time as this.
Wow. And it is. It is. I thank God for giving me the vision to do this. I had no clue. I just took a leap of faith. Before we go, I want to thank Candace for coming and sharing with us. Y'all be sure to try to get that book, Breathe, Rest, Reflect, and Reset. That's Candace Rice. You can find it on Amazon, you said?
Yes, Amazon Books a Million.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, I want to thank our producer, my buddy Kendall, who keeps us on track, keeps things going. So next week we'll be here, same time. We'll be doing. Our guest will be Dr. Deborah Haskins, and she's with the Maryland Council on Problem Gambling. A lot of good information coming forth, y'all. Stay hanging there with us. If nobody told you today, I love you if nobody else does, and it ain't a thing you can do about it. Until next week, I'll see you then.